Welcome to our Q&A with HiVERO today. And they are a newer company that has started a innovative CDI training program for nurses who want to move into the field. I'm going to go ahead and let Eric and Kelly introduce themselves and tell us a little bit more about the company.
Hi, my name is Eric McGuire. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at HiVERO. I've been in the healthcare for probably close to 30 years now, with almost 20 dedicated in the RCM space. A lot of it focused around CDI, utilization management, both the technology and services. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you what we do today.
I'm Kelly Sutton. I'm the
Yep.
Director of Learning at HiVERO. I've spent over 3 decades in healthcare. That includes some bedside nursing, with the majority of that time in the emergency department. I've held leadership roles and spent many years in clinical documentation integrity, first as a frontline reviewer, then as a regional CDI educator for 11 facilities, and then as a corporate educator for over 50 facilities. So I was also an education specialist at HC Pro or ACTIS, which is our professional organization. Throughout my career, I've really been passionate about education that's practical, ethical, and really supportive of professionals' growth. I do work closely with experienced CDI nurses, also nurses who are exploring new roles, and those who are transitioning into CDI. I totally understand both the questions and the uncertainty that can come with that shift of transitioning into a new role. At HiVERO, though, I lead the development of the Academy with a focus on building really strong foundations, encouraging critical thinking, and helping professionals feel confident taking those next steps in CDI.
Nice to meet you. And I should let the audience know too, because everybody knows me as running Nurse Fern, but I'm also a CDI nurse. So this is why this topic is close to me and wanting to learn more about what you're doing. Eric, can you
Wonderful.
tell us a little bit about the company, when it started, how it came to be?
Absolutely. HiVERO is basically a newer company from a branding perspective. However, we started from a company that had over 20 years of direct placement, staffing, consulting type of experience that we acquired. And that really started our footprint in the healthcare space. Now we've expanded. So we've opened up the learning line, which is we recognize the need for state-of-the-art education, just a real improvement to really kind of turn it around and hone it, not just in CDI, but utilization management, coding, everything in the mid-revenue cycle space is really it needs improvement. And so we decided that was going to be an area that we wanted to make a step out and to really make a difference in. And thus we hired Kelly, brought in that team, and we've been steadily working hard to improve the overall education, knowledge, and experience within that CDI space. We also opened up HiVERO Results, which is our technology and managed service solutions. So this is where we do a lot of outsourcing, a lot of CDI utilization management, where we come in and outsource and take on that responsibility for the clients. And that is new and growing. So all in all, HiVERO has been rebranded now. We've probably been almost 8 months rebranded, but have over 20 years of experience in healthcare.
Can you tell us what the other company name was?
Absolutely, with CDI Answers.
Some may recognize that name because that one's been around a while. So I always find it
Correct.
helpful to know where you branded from for the name recognition there.
It really is, but we're maintaining CDI Answers as a separate entity because Vero is focused on premium. And so packaging in the education, being able to package in the behavioral assessments and other things to really kind of round out what a candidate does. The CDI Answers is more of that directed lower. They don't have all the bells and the whistles that we do. And so we didn't want to just pull that out of the overall market. So we left it there to operate because obviously it fills a niche that's out there. But HiVERO Search is based upon a premium brand of being able to place it, combined with the education experience, the behavioral CDI assessments, and other things to ensure that every candidate we place is going to be a good fit.
I really love that you're bringing in the learning aspect. And today during the Q&A, we wanted to chat about the hiring and the learning, those two prongs of HiVERO. And can we get started by talking a little bit about the HiVERO search hiring process? How does HiVERO support CDI hiring?
HiVERO supports it by, first of all, we want to go back and make sure that we can provide education opportunities for those that are looking to get into the field. It's not an easy place to go and find education to get started. And so with the shortage of nurses that are already there, the physicians that are out there, to us, it made sense that we needed to start trying to bolster the candidates that are coming out of the bedside and to really kind of help them get into the market. We also help by making certain that they do have the necessary skills, validating where their skills sit in the overall career path. Are they a 1? Are they a 3? What does that look like? What additional education do they need to get to where their goal is? We also look at corporate tracks and certification tracks. What do they need to do to get their CDIC? What do they need to do to get their CCDS? How long do they have to sit for? What kind of experience do they need to get before that? These are all questions that we try to help answer and try to be there to support those users trying to get to that position. Flip that over. What do the clients get? Well, the clients get a service that's going to tell them that, yes, this person has not only the skills necessary, but we're going to upskill and refresh them. We're also going to do those behavioral tests to make sure that this is the person that's going to fit this type of role. Finally, going back and validating their references, making certain that they do have the education, making certain that they have those in an easy way for those clients to know, to digest, and to see. And so to me, that's the power of the offering that Search provides.
And I think one of the questions that comes up a lot is this direct placement versus travel contract work? What are you placing people for specifically?
This is definitely not locum tenens. The direct placement is we're finding full-time employees for organizations. So health systems come to us and say, hey, I need to find some CDIS 2 or a CDIS 3. We, using our networks and various pipelines, will go and find the candidates that match up to that, then validate their skills, validate their capabilities, educate them up, and then present them as a much stronger candidate than they would have just by themselves.
And do you find for hospitals that you're hiring for on-site, hybrid, and remote, or is one more popular than another?
Well, with CDI, they always prefer somebody to be on site, but they're starting to recognize that that's an impossible ask. And so more and more they're opening up to the remote and what I call hybrid operations. So therefore, there's probably 1 to 2 that are there local that could go meet with the physicians and do things that are on site, while the others can be remote and work in support or in areas that maybe doesn't require that type of communication. We're finding that the entire industry is opening up now and more is becoming remote, but there's still that need to have some there that can build those relationships with those physicians. So it's just custom balance that has to be created for each client.
How does the CDI Fundamentals program intersect with your hiring?
Foundations program is, again, it helps with the starting point with CDI. And so it helps you understand the terminology, how the basic framework of it works, what the workflow looks like, and all the basic tenets that works with. From a positioning perspective, this is what these hospitals need in their CDIS to be able to come in and to immediately have success. And that's what our foundations program teaches, those basic fundamentals of how you need to go, what you need to do, where you need to look up, how you do clarifications or queries, what that process looks like, what policies are around that and various things. So you know what to look for. These are all things that roll up in our foundation program and carry right over into our search, because this is what makes candidates extremely valuable and extremely successful in the outcomes.
And I'm always aware, as a nurse who's in CDI and somebody who has limited education funds at work, for the foundations program, this is a cost to nurses to learn it. Is there help on the back end if they choose to opt into education with finding a role?
Absolutely. Again, our instructors are there and engage with them on a day-to-day basis and want those questions, want them to ask. And that's the whole reason of having a live cohort, is the benefit of having somebody there that you can ask and pose those questions to. We get it. It's confusing. There's changes. This is different than what they've done before. And so having those people, those mentors, to be able to ask, what's this really like? How does it really flow? What does it go? Things outside of the normal questions are huge. And that's where we want to make sure we're supporting and we're there to mentor and help these people answer those questions. That may be in the form of pulling together frequently asked questions that, hey, we're getting these questions all the time. Therefore, let's build this right into our education. Let's tell them right up front what's going on. That is some of the benefits of the live mentoring and the ability to be there to answer, to fill those gaps. And to be honest with you, it's just more to give them confidence that even though this is all confusing, it will clear up. It will get easier. It's just being able to have those people there to reassure them and give them that confidence in something that's new and scary.
Now let's move on to getting into the nitty-gritty of the fundamentals program, because I'm really excited to see more about this and really get the details of what's happening inside. And I think we're going to switch over to Kelly here and have you do a little bit of a screen share and show us the program.
This is our LMS. This is our learning management system. And this is where we house our cohorts right now. Eventually, we're going to have a little bit more high-tech e-learning content on our platform. But for right now, while that's in the process of being created, we are doing our live cohorts. Our next one starts April 6th. Essentially, you'll go in and it's broken into 4-hour sessions for 5 days a week for 2 weeks. And this kind of is the outline. So you get the overview, the intro and IPPS. You get some data documentation elements. And as you know, CDI is kind of its own language in and of itself. So we do have a whole module that's devoted to common acronyms, the medical terminology, and, as far as the guidelines and resources and everything that goes along into learning the basic foundational elements of CDI. We also talk about quality. We talk about payments, a query process, which is how we ask providers questions after we do our in-depth reviews. Then we go through the MDCs, our major diagnostic categories. So essentially, we're going through all the different body systems. We talk about all the clinical indicators, risk factors, and treatments for really common diagnoses that we see in the record reviews every single day. We talk about the implications of what happens if those are in the documentation and not documented, or if the provider documents a diagnosis and they're not clinically supported. We kind of take all of that information and show the potential CDS how they're going to implement that education into their day-to-day practice.
Are they getting hands-on query writing practice?
They're getting some examples. As you go through the content, we have a couple of interesting things. So we'll go through and we'll talk about this example is fractures, for instance. As you know, there's lots of different coding nuances for our fractures. So we go through and we talk about all the different types of coding for fractures. We talk about the key characteristics of those significant open fractures. And then we give some coding examples. For me, I always learn best through examples, seeing how you're going to apply those codes to an actual case. We do have knowledge checks also as you're going through each section of our content to help reinforce the knowledge. We'll go through, show you the type of documentation you might see in a record, and as a CDS, how you would go through, how you would apply that critical thinking, how you would apply the coding knowledge and background that you end up getting. And then we show you some examples of a query that you might write. For me, this was one of the hardest things to learn as a CDS. How do you write a non-leading query? Everybody always says, what's the difference in a non-leading query and a leading query? Well, we're going to show you that. We're going to show you kind of the hardest part of the trade, in my opinion. We go through, again, clinical scenarios, give you the query examples. And then our educators do actually talk about some personal situations they've had with physician answering queries. That can be a very rewarding experience, or it can be something that's a little bit difficult at times, that communication with providers. So they do go through a lot of personal experiences, and they put all that knowledge and that experience into this course so that you can put your best foot forward going into the role.
I like that they're sharing personal experience, because I can still remember the anxiety of hitting send on my first query ever after training.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I know all of us too, we've all been in educator roles in some form or fashion in the industry for large organizations. We've taken all that knowledge, all that experience, and put it into this to kind of hopefully help the learner say, okay, I feel a little bit more confident in that query composition.
And you mentioned that this is 4 hours a day for 2 weeks. What happens with nursing schedules if a nurse works 12-hour shifts and they just can't make it to a session?
Well, the good news about that is these sessions are all recorded, so you can go back and listen whenever it's convenient for you. The best experience, in my honest opinion, is to try to attend the courses every single day so you can ask the educators your questions, as you're going along. I don't know about you, but when I was first learning in CDI, some of the best discussions and some of the best learning I had was when I was talking with other CDSs in the room, like, hey, what do you think about this? Or one of us would have a question and we would all learn from it. So it's the same type of scenario, in this environment too. Somebody asks a question and everybody learns and becomes better. But again, I know that, 12-hour schedules, if you do a few on, a few off, you're exhausted. You may not be on our schedule, and that's okay. It's recorded. It's available for you. You actually have access to that for a full year after the course is complete.
Are the instructors available outside of the teaching hours during the course?
Their emails are made available to you. There's also a discussion section here. So if you are, let's say that you're working during the day and you come and you do a couple of hours of listening to the recordings at night and you come up with a question, you can post your questions in the discussion portion of this LMS, and the instructors will make sure that they answer it in the discussion tab here, and they'll probably also hit it the next day as they start the course again.
I'm sure a lot of things come up too when nurses go back on shift and they see scenarios and things in the documentation, and it just starts the wheels turning.
Well, a lot of times too, they'll go and they'll talk to providers and say, hey, I'm doing this course on CDI, and then they get a lot of information from the physicians as well. So that's kind of an interesting thing too. They also might ask their folks in their own organizations. Like, hey, do we have a CDI team? Like, what does that look like? Can I meet the CDI team? My best advice for people taking this course would be to reach out to their own hospital CDI team and see if they can shadow for a day, for 4 hours even, just to see what really a day in the life would look like in this role. Because I don't know about you, but when I got into this role, I answered a job description that said there was some data abstraction and you would be going through documentation. And I thought, I can do this, no problem. And then when I got into the role, I was like, what have I done? It was really cool, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. No matter how many courses you take ahead of getting into this profession, I think unless you're really trying to sit with somebody and see it firsthand, you're really not going to understand the role.
I fully relate. I have no idea what the job description was that I applied to. And we were a new department, so nobody knew what they were doing. This is definitely something that clinical nurses can learn. And
Yes. Oh, yeah.
having a
Absolutely.
course like this is great to be able to go through and hit all the MDCs, learn what the DRG book is, because that's all things that I would have thought I was speaking a different language if I heard myself right now back then.
Exactly. Well, the funny thing too is when you go through this course or any of the other courses that we'll have, I always think about back to my bedside nursing days. Think, how did I get through bedside nursing and not know this stuff? How better could I have been a bedside nurse if I would have known all of this?
It's so great to hear someone else say that, because I think of that often, that if I did choose to do something clinical again, I would be a far more well-rounded nurse going back into it
Absolutely.
because of this knowledge.
Absolutely.
For the nurses that are interested in signing up, where would they find out more information about upcoming cohorts?
They'll go to academy.hivero.com and you can sign up for our next cohort, which is in April. You just have to register. And if you have any additional questions or anything, you can reach out to me as well. My email address is kelly.sutton@hivero.com.
Are there any incentive codes that nurses can use to help with the payment?
The course is normally $1,799, but if you use the code NurseFern, you get the course for $999, which is a huge bargain.
I love that. And then also, I want to make sure that nurses know that you do get education hours, correct?
Yeah, so we do have 35 ACDIS approved CEUs for this course. The course, with all the Q&A and everything that we do in the live environment, it does come out to about 40 hours, but the true content, if we were doing e-learning based content, would be about 35 hours.
Thank you so much. I am so glad we did this Q&A. I also want to highlight that I want to make sure anybody watching gets in touch with HiVERO with any questions. I'll drop links to LinkedIn, how to learn more about this course, and contact for Kelly down in the description.